Hey everyone, this is John from EastCoastArmory.com, and I'm here today with a project update video for this 1/6 scale radio-controlled Armortek Russian T34 85 medium tank. This is a video series that has been anticipated for a long time now, specifically since it has been a while since I had any sort of update or progress to report on with this project. Well, if anyone's a fan of the channel, you'll know that for the last half a year or so, I was focusing my efforts on completing the Armortek radio-controlled King Tiger, and that was a project that was concluded back in the late winter. With that project out of the way, I have now been able to return my focus to the T34 85, and this build now is going to be focused on until it crosses the finish line, much along the lines as I did on the King Tiger. Which means if you're a fan of the T34 project, this is great news for you, because there's going to be more updates now for this project, and they're going to be posted in a more regular manner as opposed to previously. So picking up from the last time I worked on this project goes back to the turret. In the previous video where I went ahead and made the turret up to the condition that we have here, I talked about how the Armortek kit turret was modified in order to adjust some of the shape of the geometry on several of the sections in order to better replicate that of a real T34. I also went ahead and mentioned some of the other details that I added that you could see integrally, well, which would be molded on the real vehicle. And not to mention, you can see the final cast texturing that has been applied. However, one thing that was bugging me on this turret, and this was something that I personally noticed after the last video where I took this thing for a test drive, and even someone in the comments section noticed it, was that even though I did a fairly decent job with adjusting the other locations of the turret's geometry, one area that needs a little bit more improvement are right over here in its cheek sections. It appears that right now it has a little bit of a Marlon Brando type cheek system to it, so this is something that is going to be adjusted, and this is the best time to do so before the build can progress past this point. So with the camera off the tripod, hopefully you get to see the areas I marked with a marker in order to illustrate exactly what I was referring to. I kind of feel like a plastic surgeon right now where I'm marking the areas that need to be adjusted, but this is something that is best done, and it actually does help to have a nice visual aid like the one I did over here. Like I was referencing before, this area here is a bit too bulbous, and on a real T34 it has much more of a sleeker profile to these sections over here, so this chunk of material is going to have to be adjusted, and this is something that's best done with the angle grinder. Just like I mentioned before, where I went ahead and modified the other shapes, the angle grinder is the best tool for this, and it's something that can easily be wielded by myself, and I could just basically carve the section accordingly. Also, one advantage is that because this unit here is solid aluminum, it's not hollow or anything, so this should make the removal process a bit easier, and I don't have to worry about anything like cavitations or other sort of potential problems that can happen if this unit here was made out of a hollow type casting. Just as last time, before I go ahead and actually start grinding, I went ahead and took some proper precautions. With some masking tape here, I went ahead and plugged up all the holes that are found on the turret roof, as well as also the gap over here between the mantlet and the turret itself. As we saw in the earlier videos, the inside now has its machinery, and the last thing you want is for crap to get on the inside, specifically this crap, because it's really nasty and you just don't want it near your mechanical equipment. The other thing you'll notice is that the turret is actually currently sitting on an empty 5-gallon bucket. This is just so it props the turret up. It actually does a really good job in keeping it seated in place so that I can work on it and at a more comfortable level, waist height. But also it's a place for the subloom to dangle inside of, so it's one less thing in the way. As for the grinding, I got here my angle grinder. I got a fresh brand new grinding disc on it, and I am going to be taking the proper safety precautions, which would include both a respirator as well as a pair of safety goggles. This type of procedure is going to kick up a lot of really nasty particulate. This is the type of crap you definitely don't want in either your lungs and or your eyes. So yeah, that's definitely something you want to pay attention to when you're doing a procedure like this. But without further ado, we can go ahead, mask up, eyeglass up, and start with the grinding process. So after a few swipes in the allocated location, you can see that the turret shape is starting to change. and it's starting to replicate more of the actual look of the T3485. However, before I jump onto the other side, when I was comparing it to my little Tamiya one over here, I can see that I could probably make a little bit more adjustments to this section over here, because in my opinion this seems to be still a little bit too blunt. So I'm going to go ahead and knock off more of this curvature over here so it makes it more round and it'll better replicate the real unit. Once this is concluded, I can then repeat the same steps to the opposite side. Okay, so with the grinding out of the way, you can see just how much more the tart was revised. As one thing leads to another, you start in one section, and then next thing you have to flare in the angle, and then you get this type of situation that we have here. And so far, the tart is looking really, really good now. And if we compare and contrast that to the one on the opposite side, you can definitely see just how much more improved it looks overall. Now, obviously, during the grinding process, the molding and detailing here had to have been deleted, but fortunately, this is really easy to repair, and I'll show that momentarily. But at a quick glance, you can see just how much more curved this area is over here, as opposed to the one on the opposite side, which, yeah, it was curved, but it was more of a steeper type angle, as opposed to this one, where it's more continuous. And that shape continues all the way from the top the bottom portion here of the cheek. And because that, the profile is now going to be much more narrower compared to the way we had it before with that double chin. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat the following steps to the opposite side, and I'm going to basically have the thing as a mirror image. When it comes to something like this, fortunately, T34 going to T34, so because of that, trying to blend it and make it sure it's absolutely perfect is not necessarily something that's really important. You just have to basically eyeball it and make sure that more or less the contours are lining up. The other thing I want to mention, this was something I believe I touched upon in the other video, is that holy hell does this put a lot of wear and tear on one of these tools here. This thing gets really hot from just with the grinding procedure. So much so that I want to stress, you cannot do this procedure unless you have a proper angle grinder like you have here. Some people will probably ask, well, can I do that with a Dremel? Sure, I guess, you know, just much along the same lines you could kill an elephant with a BB gun. Is it possible? Theoretically, is it feasible? Absolutely not. This type of grinding over here will basically destroy your Dremel, so it's definitely not something that is recommended or endorsed. So if you are going to be doing a procedure like this, just go ahead and, you know, use something that's a little bit more industrial. And here's the turd now with the last of the grinding out of the way. As you can see, I made it as close as possible as a symmetrical mirror image on each side. And for the most part, it should do the job just fine. In addition to taking care of this side, I also hit this side a little bit more just to refine it further. And as you can see, the shape is much more prototypical and correct compared to the way we had it before. It's amazing just what removing a little bit of material can do. So from here, I'm going to now repair the detail work that I had before, which would include the seam line, as well as also the cast texturing. As for how this is going to be done, well, it's going to be using the exact same procedures I did originally. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And as you can see, the putty work, once completed, blends right into the remainder of the turret's cast texturing, and from this point on, the revision work is now fully completed. Fortunately, I had just enough putty on hand to do the job, so this thing is now going to be tossed into the bin, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up a fresh tube from Amazon. At this point here, I'm just going to wait for the putty to dry, then I can re-hit the turret again with a coat of red primer. And at that point there, the revision work is all complete, and I can now continue with the remainder of the build. So as I stated before, this was something that was bugging me for almost like a year now, and I'm finally glad I was able to get to this revision and take care of it. This was one of those things that I kind of had to do when the weather permitted, so it being early spring, it was definitely the opportunity to jump on this, also specifically since the King Tiger now is finished, so that also frees me up to work on this project a little bit more until completion as well. With the revision work out of the way, I can now focus on the remaining aspects of the turret as well as the upper hull for that matter, which would include the fastening system for the top deck. This is going to be mentioned and go into more depth in the next following video updates. In addition to that, something else that I've been working on has been the research and development as well as the design and production of many new detail components for the T3485 family. Many of these items are in development right now, and I even have one very large, prominent item that the development work is all completed, and I'm currently waiting for the production to wrap up so I could get the part in hand and then secure it to the rear section of the vehicle. But more information on that is to come, again, in the next following video updates. So definitely stay tuned for that. That wraps up this project update video for this 1/6 scale radio-controlled Armortek Russian T34 85 medium tank. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to this channel where it's a great way to keep up to date on new posted videos such as project update videos like this one over here or the other smaller scale model showcase videos that frequently get posted to this channel. Another way to keep in loop with new posted content is by liking us on Facebook. There, I have more photographs of this particular build that have been posted since the project start, as well as photographs of the other smaller and larger scale builds that have been seen on this channel previously. Furthermore, don't forget to swing by eastcoastarmory.com for more 1/6 and 1/16 scale builds and detailed components. Thanks again. I'll be seeing you all again on the next one. Till then.